We are streaming, we are live, and you can see an empty screen. So today, before we get started, we're going to build a simple weather app that does one thing. It gets you the weather based on your zip code. So by the end of it, we'll be able to just type in any zip code that you want and build something from there. So I do have a few pictures that we can take a look at real quick and show you what we're going to be building. So we have the front page will look something similar to this, maybe a little different because this is all janked up. And when you click the Get the Weather button, that will build and make a call, and you'll get a nice response to look something like this. The weather in Ghana is clear sky. Here's an icon that I'm going to use that's just a nice bright sun, and then the temperatures in the area. So we do have that, and from there, let's get building. So before we get started, I'm just going to create something using the Express generator, and then from there we'll be able to do some cool stuff. So we're going to use the Express generator today, which is not something I usually use, but to do this, you're just going to type npx express-generator -e and then the name. So we'll call this the weather app. And this will pull in some stuff and create everything that we need for a basic application. Now we've done that, now we can open this with code and you'll be able to actually see some stuff on screen. So at this point, what actually happens is the Node Express generator will create a new application that's ready to run. Like we could run this today. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Good to be back. Yeah, so it'll build out this application. I saved you from. What did I save you from? It's always interesting to hear. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when someone suddenly starts streaming, it is a good feeling. Especially when you've been bored for a while and nothing interesting has happened. So I'm glad I can bring you some entertainment. Let me just fix a couple of things here. This is a new stream machine, so I'm still trying to get used to. There we go. That's a little better. We might need to change that again. But back to what we were doing. So we used the Express generator to create this simple layout. It's a ready to go app and it does a few things for us. So what it does is it creates the base layers for you to simplify your Express application. So instead of having to type all of this out, which we could have done, it will do it for us. Excuse me. Oh, so we have the cookie parser, and it will do HTTP errors for us. It will create paths for us, and it will also do routes for whatever we want to do. And on top of that, it does all the view work and even does 404s if something is wrong. So basically, this does the very minimal amount of work for you to have a working application. So we could just do, you know, terminal run, Npm install, and install all the dependencies, and immediately afterwards run Npm start, and we should just get a simple message down here that says node bin www, which means that it's ready to be, like, we can go and look at it now. So if I open a new tab, throw it over here and go to localhost 3000, and there we go. Express, welcome to Express. Super simple, nothing crazy. It's not doing anything special for us. So by the end of this, we're going to take this and transform it into a weather app that does a whole bunch of stuff for us, and it will look really nice because we're going to use Tailwind, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it is very popular right now, and a lot of people are trying to learn Tailwind, so why don't we use it? Maybe I'll love it by the end of it. Who knows? So let's talk about what this app does. So it has a couple of different folders here. We have the routes folder and the views folder. So the routes basically just says when it does something like router.get, please return this. So basically this is the same thing as if you've ever used a router before. It will take the router and say, hey, he's trying to go to this location on the site or the application. This is what I should do. And then it has another one that if we try and get users, it will respond with resource. So we can show that off real quick. Apparently close that tab. Let's pull one over here. If we just go to here and type users, you see now it says respond with resource, which is the same thing as what's denoted here. Super simple, nothing too crazy. And then on top of that, it has errors, which will get rendered to the screen via a template. And then the index, which is what's actually rendering. So right now in the body, we just have a title that says, you know, H1 title, welcome to, and then whatever the title may be. And then you can link in style resources, you can do your responsive stuff, all that kind of stuff is handled as well. So it's super nice, super simple, and it can get you up and running really quickly. And then you have your publics where you can put your images, or if you've got specific JavaScript that you need to run on the client side that you want to put in here, or if you want to do some crazy style sheets, you can also do that. So before we've even typed maybe more than, I don't know, I think I wrote one line of code to get this all up and running. Now we can build off this and say, hey, I can do whatever I want, let me build something, and you don't have to do all the framework work, which for some people is too much, and for others it's good to learn to do this yourself if you haven't been developing for 10 plus years. But it's also a quick cheat sheet to get you into your app faster. So at this point, let's add Tailwind, which is sort of a weird thing to do with Express and Express Generator. And we'll go through it step by step so that you can do it on your machine at home if you're watching this on a VOD, or if you're watching this live and want to do it too. So let's get going. So the beginning is fairly simple. We're just going to do an npm install. I'm glad you love Tailwind. At least somebody does. I'm a big fan of Chakra UI, which has been my new favorite thing. But I have been using that in a bunch of React stuff. So Chakra UI, it is, let me pull up for you. I can quickly show it before we continue. Okay. So it's just for React, and it's just, you know, a super nice UI framework that does a whole bunch of stuff for you right out the back. It's fully themable, it's composable, so like components are built in and you can override the components to do specific things for you. And on top of that, it has a bunch of really, really nice stuff. Flex is super useful. You literally type the word flex and then tell it what kind of flex you want to use, like flex align item center, and it will do all the work for you. Along with that, it's completely, if you see this line here where it has MT equals and then in the parent 2, you can set that to individual breakpoints similar to Tailwind. So it's super nice, super quick. If you're doing any React work, I would recommend it. It's like this line to install it, and then you can make your own themes and set breakpoints and font sizes and all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah, I actually have a course coming out probably in the next couple weeks that actually takes Chakra UI, Next.js, and Sanity.io and builds you basically a blog that will look similar to this, which is my site. And you'll be able to make a blog that does sort of these things, and you can go inside and you can have dark mode, light mode, you can have comments and upvotes, and then pages and links out, and super fast contact me page, and every page is completely responsive, and that's all thanks to Chakra UI. So this basically is going to be the course minus a few things where, you know, you're not going to do this part, but the blog will be the same. And then you can do cool things where this is completely copyable. So you can click this and it does a little check mark and copies all the code out. So back to what we're working on right now. So first we have to install Tailwind and save to dev. Because we don't need this as a dependency when it runs, only when we're developing. So that will save that. Then we have to run a Tailwind command, and that's npx and then Tailwind CSS init. And this just tells that you're going to be using Tailwind in this application itself. So it says we've created this Tailwind config file, config.js. And basically it just says, like, if you want a theme or variants or plugins, you can pop them in here and the app will pick them up. Then you need to install post CSS globally, not just on this package itself. So to do that, you can type npm install g post CSS CLI. And that's it. I already have this installed, but we'll just run it anyway. It's not going to break anything. npm's not that smart. And it updated a package to the latest version. So now what we need to do is create a new file in our root directory that is just the post CSS that handles stuff that happens basically at the end. So it's just going to be a post CSS config file, and it's going to be JS because that's what we're working in right now. And now we need to actually tell it what we want to do. So it's going to be a module exports, and this basically, oh, missed a period there. This basically says we're going to export this out as a module, so it can be used anywhere. And then we're going to open these up and make a mistake there, like this. So now anything inside of this is going to be exported out. So first we're going to do plugins. And the plugins is essentially like, are we using any plugins? Well, yes, we are going to be using two. We're going to require Tailwind CSS. That's the first one. And this basically just says, we are going to use Tailwind throughout this whole project. I need to use that. And then the second one that we're going to use, which might be super obvious, or maybe not, is auto prefixer. Prefixer. Good spellings. And that does your post CSS config file. So now you don't have to worry about accidentally, essentially, we won't be using any more than the modules that we actually use for Tailwind. So you're not going to like do anything crazy, and it's not going to basically blow out your application, which is important. And then we're almost ready to go. So now we can create a style sheet, call it new file, and we'll just call it, I guess, Tailwind. Or yeah, we'll just call it Tailwind. And inside of here, we're just going to put three things. And it's just going to be at, and then Tailwind, which you may have seen before. And then base, at Tailwind, components, and finally at Tailwind, utilities. So that's I can't spell utilities today. Utilities. There we go. And that's just going to import all of the pieces to our puzzle. Then we hit save there. And now we're going to do the final part, which essentially is the build piece that takes care of everything and makes sure that the styles are available everywhere in our application and not just here, essentially. So inside your package JSON, we have this start script. And the start script essentially says, hey, just go ahead and load Node and we'll do it from this directory, right? So first things first, we have to make sure we install NodeDaemon so that it will automatically pick up changes. But also we want to build the CSS so that when we start the project, we have Tailwind available for us. So first, let's create a new build script underneath, and we'll call that build CSS. And this just, all it's going to do is build CSS. It's not going to do anything else. And inside of here, we're going to have to type out a bit. So we're going to tell post CSS that we want to build something, and we're going to take the public / style sheets, and then tailwind.css. So this is saying, hey, we want to take this file right here, public style sheets, tailwind.css. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this. And we're going to say style sheets, public / style sheets. Am I spelling that wrong? Yep. / style.css. So what this is doing in one giant line, let me just put my formatting back on. It's saying, okay, take everything from any CSS files that we have, which is the Tailwind and the style CSS, so all globals, and cram them together so that we have one file. Then from there, we can build this, and we can actually tell npm to run this at the same time so that when we build it, we don't have to worry so much about what's happening here. We don't have to worry about running this separately every time we want to run the app, right? So you can type npm, and then we're going to run build / CSS and do this. And this basically says, do this process, then do this process, then we're good to go. Really simple. And then we'll have Tailwind wherever we want to use it. So we can use it in our app. We can use it basically anywhere. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and hit save. So now we saved it, that's ready to go. But more importantly, let's go ahead and install NodeDaemon so that it will launch every time we make a change. So node there we go. So that will install that, and we can use this to run. Instead of using node, we can just write this, and now this should run and we should be good. So let's just test this before we get going on anything else. Let's go ahead and run this. And of course, classically, we've errored out here. Did you mean build CSS? I did, and I see the mistake there now. Okay, so let's try running this one more time. All right, so now it's taking this and putting it inside of here. So if we look, now we've got this giant style sheet that contains basically any Tailwind we might want to use. And now it's available for us in the front end, so we can do basically anything that we want. And we could test this real quick here. We could just do a quick test maybe. Let's see. Let's do add a class here, and we'll call that flex and then items center. And we can see, even if this doesn't do what I want it to do, we can see if this is being applied as a class and if it's trying to actually do what we want. And we can also test to make sure that everything kind of works the way we expect. So let's go ahead and open a new window for the old Chrome. Here it is. And we can just do localhost 3000, hit F12 and inspect this. And you can see that this is being applied. Align item center and flex is also being applied. So now we know that Tailwind is working, it's installed, and it's set up and ready to go. So now we can actually build our application to do something, and hopefully at that point, you know, do something cool. But let me just turn off something on Pretzel. It's super annoying. Go. Because I keep getting alerted that I'm being, someone's chatting to me when it's actual Pretzel rocks. Okay, so at this point, we should talk about what we're going to use to build this out, and then go from there. So when we're building this, we're going to be using environmental variables to store an API key, which we're going to be using. I keep closing my Chrome window for some reason. We're going to be using the Open Weather API. Now, if you haven't seen this before, it's super nice. We'll just go here first. Basically, let's block that. Basically, it gives you the temperature, humidity, what the actual weather is right now. They handle the icons for you. Basically, it does everything, and we can handle that in our application and render something nice on the front end without having to worry. It is free of charge, and it is super simple to set up. So we'll be using environmentals to put our API key from here. And we'll also be taking an input from the user, and the user will be entering in their zip code, and we'll take that and we will create the request, and we'll send that request off, and the response back will be the weather in their area. And then on top of that, we'll also be handling what happens if they type in something they shouldn't. And on top of that, what happens if there's an error, right? So let's say the API error is out and we don't get any weather back. Well, we need to do something gracefully to say, sorry, we accidentally didn't get back data, or maybe the city that they're using isn't supported by the API, right? So we can advise them that no weather was returned, please try a different zip code, or maybe just try something else. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. And we're gonna be using request to do this. Maybe not everyone's biggest fan of request, but request is really nice. Unfortunately, it just got deprecated in February, but it makes simple HTTP requests. And it's sort of similar to other things that you may have seen on the internet, such as GOT or just simple HTTP requests from Node. But we're going to be using request today because it's just simpler, and you can write a function handler. And it's a nice introduction into the world of Node and API requests versus using other ones in the industry that are out there right now. On top of that, we will be doing some error handling. We'll also do using partials, which yeah, I like that too. That's one of my favorite ones. I just decided to use something different. This whole application build itself is very different. I don't know many people that are using Express Generator anymore to do their work. They might build this, what we're going to build out, but they won't use that. Yeah, exactly. Good to learn. That's exactly it. That's why I basically do this kind of thing. Yeah, so we'll use partials, which is basically a way of doing a fragment at the top of the page, or maybe at the bottom of the page, so that you can handle specific things that you want on every page. And then on top of that, obviously, we'll be doing some Tailwind. Small amount, simple stuff, nothing too crazy that's going to get you too lost, and it's easy to follow along if you want to at home. If you have time, or if you're watching this on the VOD, then you can go along and pause, rewind, and do all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's get in it. So first things, let's open a new terminal here and do an npm install, and we're going to install request, and we'll do --save so that we save that. And in our package JSON now, we have request, we have express, Thanks for the follow. Super appreciate that. Means a lot. Almost at 100, so thank you so much. So we have the EJS, which is these templates. We have Express, we have the HTTP errors, we have Morgan, no daemon request, and we do need a couple other things, right? So do we need anything else? Yes, we need body parser. So let's do an npm install. Well, actually, no, I think that's pre-installed. Let's see if we have everything we need. I think we do. Let's get building, and then if something breaks, we can come back and fix it later. So from here, yes, I think it is part of Express. It used to not be, and I think that's why I'm questioning it. So in our routes, let's go ahead and delete this user's route. We don't need this anymore. We can keep this errors route just in case something happens. Then we just need this route to do some handling for us. And then we have our errors index, which is currently the home page. And that's it. So let's get building. So what I'll do first is show you how partials work. Now, partials are super fantastic, and they're quick and easy, and basically they're just miniature versions of particular HTML. So as you can see here, we have this whole head and body and everything else. Well, we don't need any of that, right? We don't need this on just one page. We need it on every page. So that we know it's an HTML file, and we also know that we want to use the style sheet. Because when we're using these partials, if we actually create a new page here with EJS, it won't know that we need more things, so it won't get loaded in. So what you can do is, in your views, you can create a folder, and we'll just call this folder partials. And inside of that, we can create whatever we need. So let's make a new file and call it header EJS, and we'll make a one called a footer. Now these are the easiest parts because footers and header is going to be the same on every page, and we don't really have to worry. So what we can do is take this piece here, including the opening body tag. Let's take that and drop that in our header. So now that we have this will load on every page. Let me just turn off. So if you have automatic formatter, which is what I have Prettier installed. If you have that installed, you might want to look into the, there's an extension out there where you can disable and re-enable formatting. So in this case, we need to do that, because if I hit save, you can see it added the end body tags and the end HTML tag, which we don't want to happen. So down here, I can click this little button, and if I hit save now, nothing will happen. So we're good to go. Another important thing that we're going to need, right, is that we're going to need the meta tag to make it responsive, because out of the box, it is not responsive. So we need to make sure that it is responsive and everybody is happy. So we can go ahead and do meta name viewport, and then the content, which tells it what widths we should be using. So width equals device, and that says, sorry, device width. So that says the width of the device is how wide our viewport is. So that's how much we can see. And then we'll do initial dash scale equals 1. And that says, basically that's just saying like the scale should be 1. And then we'll just go ahead and close this meta tag out. And that's a partial. It's done. It's finished. Let's get rid of this title tag because we don't really need it in this example. And now this is ready to be imported into our index file, and we can use that index file or this partial anywhere in our application, and it will always load it. So let's create a footer, because right now this body tag, if you look at this, it's being closed off here, which is, we don't want that. We want that to be in that partial in the footer so that it closes out and we don't have to worry about it ever not being used. So in the footer, we'll just go here and we'll just do the closing body tag and the closing HTML tag. And then we'll hit save. And then what we can do now is say, okay, we can get rid of this. But now we actually need to load these partials in and say, let me use these partials on this page, because you can make a partial for anything, right? So if you wanted, for example, my Twitch channel to be at the bottom of every blog page, I could do that, but I don't want it on my home page, so I can do that too. Or maybe some variant of that, right? Or you want it on every other page, things like that. You can do that with these partials. So in the index, to include a partial, you do an open bracket with parentheses and say include, and then wherever the partials is. So in our example, it's partials and header. And then we just close it out. And that will say, hey, include that header on this page. And then we can do the same at the bottom. Do %include partials / footer. And then that will take the footer and put it at the bottom of our page. So if we hit save now, we can turn our formatting back on. So it kind of neatens it up a little bit. If we now go to the website and say, hey, can I see what you're doing? Go here. The page looks exactly the same, right? Nothing has changed, but we can see that I've probably made a mistake there because it says initial scale, and I think I spelt it wrong. But you can see that the head is here with this, the body is here, and the end body tag is here, and the HTML is here. So we know that these partials are working now. So now we have this great starting framework to build around and make our weather application do things, and we don't have to worry about including things on every page. So first, let me see if I can fix my spelling mistakes. Minimize this, go to the header here and look at this initial, because I can't spell, there's another I in here. Okay, and let's just close that out because we don't need Twitter open anymore. And now the warning is gone. So now we're in a great spot, right? We can now just do the work. So what I want to include on every page is a few things. So I want to include a div that forces flex on every page so that I don't have to include flex on every page. I also want to make sure that it's the right width and height of the screens. And I also want to just include a title. And for now, we're just going to do a real simple text title. And then from there, we can build out a little more. And then if we don't get this done by the time the stream's over, we can add some more later and do some more CSS. But for now, let's keep it simple. And just a reminder of what we're actually trying to achieve, right? So let me just pull this over here. Like this is what the homepage sort of look like. This is all chopped up, but this is what it should look like. And then when we get the weather, it should also look like this. Really simple, but like you can see we've got little pills down here, and then we got an icon and where the weather is from, etc. So let's start by adding in some stuff, right? So here we have this in the header. We have, oh, I did it again. Oh, because I had the formatting on when we did those last changes. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add a div here, and we're going to set that class to flex. And then flex column, and then also we'll do H screen. Now this is Tailwind, so if you haven't seen Tailwind before, essentially what I'm asking it to do is add 3 classes: the flex class, flex column class, and the H screen class, which are all part of Tailwind. They're not like something I'm going to create, but they will do something on the other side. And we need to close that out, but we don't want this div. Get out of here. So now anything that's inside of here, which is anything after the partial, it will have this class attached to it and wrapped around it. So you kind of have like what a container is. So from there, let's just add an h1 above it. And we're just going to say simple weather application. We'll do this, and then we'll just add a couple classes. And the first class we'll add is text to XL, and also we'll do text in the center. So that basically says make it whatever 2XL is in Tailwind, and also just make this in the center, which is the same thing as if you just did a style text center. They just do it for you. And now we hit save here. And now we have to make one more change, and that's in the footer, right? Because we added in the header, we have this div that never closes. So we have to add a div here to the top and say, close out that div. And now what we should have is this simple weather application, and all of this should be inside of Flex. So here we go, flex col h screen. So h screen is height 100 view h, which is 100% of the viewport. Then we have flex direction is column, display flex. Just kill that out. And now we're basically done with these partials. We don't want to do anything else with these partials. We're good to go. So this is now time to start building things out. So in the index, we're going to need a couple things, right? So we're going to need a form, and that form is going to need to be posted at some point to our backend. And we're also going to need to ask for input from the user. So we're going to say, dear user, please give us something, whatever that might be. So right now we're saying, you know, in our current, we just have this, and that's it. We don't have anything special. And then in, so we're going to get rid of this. We're going to get rid of this. And then inside of that, we're going to do some form work, which everybody's seen, I'm sure, at some point. So let's go ahead and delete that. And now we have this empty page, essentially, that will only have, if I hit save now, it'll only have that header at the top. So now all we have is the header. So let's start by adding a form, and we'll just set an action for now, and we'll just assume that I'm going to make the API weather, right? That's what we're going to make the action happen. So when it goes to do this form action, it's going to look for /weather in our application, and if it's available and the method is correct, it will do something. So the method that we're going to use, of course, is post, because we need to post some data, get something back. So now we have a form. Inside of that form, we're going to need something from the user. We're going to need an input, and then that's going to be of text, and then a button that they click and something happens, right? So it submits this form for us. So we can just do an input, and we're going to do type equals text. And then we'll do a placeholder, right? So placeholders are important. And we'll just set that to enter your zip code. And on top of that, let me just make sure my formatting's back on so it looks nice at the end. We'll do an ARIA label. And this defines a string value that the label for the current element. And we're just going to set this to location. And we'll do name equals location as well. And then if we hit save, we should get a slightly formatted set from, there we go. So now it's formatted it and made it easy to read, and this is what Prettier does for us. So we don't have to worry about formatting it so much, we just hit save and it's done. So now we should have an input on our page. And there we go. We've got this horrible input at the top of our screen. It's not styled. It says enter zip code. And we have no way to submit this to our code and say, can I please have the weather for this area? Which is fine. We can add that now. And then afterwards, we can go back and make it look like what we want. Because it's more important to get the functionality to work than it is to make it look like what we want, right? So we have the input. So the next piece is that we need a button that does something. So let's add a button. And that button is just going to be type equals submit. And that's basically all we need right now. And we'll just set get weather. And now if we go back, there'll be this horrible button there that says get weather. So now if we do this, oh no, 404 not found. Like, how does that help us? It doesn't, right? So this doesn't help us in any possible way. We just get rid of that so we can see it. And nice and big, not found. It couldn't find that post to /weather, and that's because we haven't built that piece out right. We haven't built any more functionality than we had before, but at least we know if we hit that button, something will happen. So now what? Well, now we need to look inside that routes and do something with the index routes to handle if somebody, you know, requests the weather from us. So going back to our code, here we go. And we say in here, right now we just have this get router that just basically puts the title as express, and that's it. So now we need a new piece, right? So we'll do a router.post and we'll do weather. And this says like, hey, weather. Like if the weather is requested, we'll do something. And then we're gonna do a function request and response. And at this point, essentially we could do whatever we want. So why don't we just do, let's create a new view and we'll call that view weather, because that's where we're gonna show this to the user. So inside of our views, we just do weather.ejs, nice and empty. And back in the index, we'll say res.render and we'll say weather, and we'll put the title to weather, and that's it. And we broke something. Yeah, we like to break things. Let's see. That seems like a very strange module to be finding. Okay. Let's get rid of this. And this. And I think we should be good to go now. And there we go. /weather is now available. And I believe if you can see that right now nothing has been loaded, right? So we don't have the title at the top because we're not putting those partials on the page. But we can see that this works and it didn't give us the 404 error that it gave before. So we're a step closer to getting functionality, right? So we do have some stuff, but it's not 100%. So let's go back to this. Let's just minimize this. And say, okay, we have this, but we actually want it to do something, right? We want it to go out to this API and get the weather for this location and place it somewhere else. And that's what we're aiming for right now, right? We just want it to return the weather to us. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be special, but we just want the weather. Everybody needs to know what the weather is. So, with that being said, before we go crazy and do anything out of the ordinary, let's talk about how this API works and how the API functionality can be used. So let's go to the Open Weather API. And here's the API. And this is the one that we're going to be using. It gives you the current weather right now within a specific amount of period of time, but we'll just assume that it's real time. And what you can do is you can do it a couple ways, right? So I'm not understanding why this is a post method. So I guess I got ahead of myself, right? So minimize this. So this post method, right? When we actually build out the application, we're actually going to be passing this input from the user as a post back, right? And we're going to use that to take the information, and I've now lost the page that I want, and we're going to actually do something with this. So we need a post because we actually need the we need something from the user. Like with a get, we're just going to get something, but we can't assume like a get won't, you need to pass a variable down, right? And in this case, like right now, it probably doesn't make any sense because we're not doing anything. We're just rendering a title. But what we're going to do is do something like this, where we do like a let, and then we'll say zip code. Zip code equals request dot body dot location is what we called it, and then we do like a request, and inside of that request we do URL, and we'd pass in say the zip code and get response back, and then we'd render the page based on this response. Would the zip code from the user be part of the API query string? Do you mean the open weather API string or this page? Because this actual form will be posted. I suppose I see what you're saying. Yeah, do you want to clarify what you're explaining? Because this part is a post, and the body will contain it. Right, so that's separate from this, right? This part right here is this router.post is this post of this file. This form right here, we're just saying this method is a post, and the router is looking for a post. The weather API is part of the query string, but we have to get that query string from somewhere. We can't just magic this. Yeah, you got it? We can't just magic the zip code out of nowhere. We're posting that from that form. Bit confusing because we're like layering stuff on top of each other, and you're right. This is just a query string. So the query string can be anything, right? It could be city and name. It could be just the city. We could do the city ID, or you could do your latitude and longitude, the short version, if you happen to know what that is in your country. But we're going to be using this, and we're actually going to be using it slightly different than what they say here, because we're not actually going to pass in the country code, because we're just going to assume that our users are from the United States, which is a bit of a cop-out, but to keep this as simple as possible, we don't want to, and we could maybe add that at the end where we just pass in another variable where they can type in their country code, but we have to make sure that they enter the country code correctly, because you see here it's a lowercase US, and we have to make sure they're using the correct country code for their country, and that can get a little sticky for user input. But for now, we're going to use this API and create just a simple request that returns basically all this wonderful data, and then we'll do something with it. So the way that it works is you pass along the zip code and your API key as the app ID, and then it responds in a nice JSON. It's probably the easiest outside of Catfax API out there in the industry. Yeah, more validations. We don't want any more validation here than we have to. So we'll keep this simple for now, and we can add validation as we go. Or maybe we want to, in the future, to make it easier, maybe we store it in the database. So we only make one request if they make continuous requests. Or we cache it. We can do a bunch of different stuff. But for now, simple. And then we can build it out. And, you know, in future, maybe in another live stream, we do one where we can take the weather API and create a system to give you 5 days worth of data, because that's restricted in their API, but we could store 5 days worth of data and return it to the user. And if we don't have 5 days, we'll give you the maximum amount that we have. So back to what we need to do. So we need to take the user input and stuff it into this zip piece in the query string. And then we're going to add in our API key from the query string also. So first, let's talk about the API key, right? We don't want the API key to just be sat here out in broad daylight, like, you know, API key equals secret API key for everybody to look at, right? We don't want that to happen. We don't want people to be enjoying our API key and abusing it, for example, right? Because that's perfectly valid point. Someone could go and abuse it. So what we'll do is we'll use an environmental variable here to store our API key. So to do that, just create a .env file, and this .env file will contain the API key that we want to use, and we'll just call it API key. And you'll have to get your API key from the weather people, which just happens when you sign up. They give it to you automatically, and you can set hundreds of them, and they accumulate the amount of usage as you go along. So let me just quickly put in my API key, and then we can head back in. So just assume this is going to be there. So let's see here. Let me just put my API key in here. And we'll close that out. And we'll come back to the screen. And now you should see my screen again. All right, good to go. So now we can do whatever we want, right? So now in this secret file, I have an API key. So let's just go ahead and delete this out because we don't need it anymore. And a good thing that we're going to need here is we're actually going to need to install one more thing into our package. So let me just kill this server. And we're going to install .env. And .env just takes environmental variables and passes them in. So now we've installed that, we can use that to read what's inside of this file, and makes life super simple. So with that, what we need is to say this API key, which we'll actually call API key. API key. Yeah, okay, we'll call it that. And then we'll set this to process.env, and then the name of the API key, which we called API key in that .env file. So now this will actually load in the API key, and we can use that to grab the data. So at this point, we're 99% of the way there. We've got a zip code from the user, which is what's coming here. We have an API key, which is being loaded through this .env file. So now we just need to create the URL. So we're going to do this inside of this function. We probably should do it outside of it, but that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a template here, and we're going to just say, it's actually HTTP API.openWeather app. No, it's OpenWeather. Let's just copy it. I don't want to write this down. Okay, So that's the part we need. And then we can do the rest ourselves. So Alt Tab back. And say API. So we're telling it that we want to use their API. .openweathermat.org/data 2.5, which is the latest version that they currently have. And then here we can tell it that we want to use the zip code, right? So it says zip, and then all we do for templating is do the $, then open the brackets, and then we can put in whatever we want. So we'll just put in zip code. And what happens here is it will take the value of this and replace it in here as a string. So instead of having to type it in every time, we can do that. Then a little extra piece that we want is that we're going to make the units imperial, which you can do part of the API is you can just set the units equal to, and then you can set it to whatever metric or imperial. We want imperial. And then finally, we want them to use the app ID equal to, of course, our API key that I just put in here. And that's it. So this request now is essentially ready. It's ready for us to make into something. So let's just go ahead and hit save for now. And now what we're going to do is, did I install request? I did. Okay. So now we can actually make the request out to the API and get response back. So let's build that piece and then go from there. So with request, it's as simple as writing the word request. But first, let's make sure it's imported up here correctly, which it's not because it's neither of these. Hold on. It thinks that I want the request from that. We don't. I like how this mixes variables. That's cool. So let's set this to a const. And this to a const. Okay. We actually don't even need this technically anymore. Get rid of that. All right. And now we're just going to add in body parser, because we're going to need that. Body parser. And we're also going to require request to be used here. So we need request because that's how we're going to make our API request. And we're just going to require request. And then we're going to fix that because don't fight with me. Oh, just because that's what we actually need. And then request is just request. Okay, so now we have everything that we need imported to actually do something here, right? So request works on the idea that you do request and then open. You tell it what URL that you want, and then you've got options and the callbacks and the request, etc. So we're just going to do a URL, and then the callback for us is just going to be a function that has an error, a response, and a body. That's it. So at this point now, let's just close that out. We can do something here and say, you know, make this request, and it's going to take this URL and make a request. And then we have this function here that essentially will do all the handling of something. So what we could do is just take this and place it in here. And then we'll do console.log, and then we'll do JSON.parse, and we'll just take the body. So this will take the body that's responded back, and we'll do something with it. So we'll just log it out, and then we'll just render the weather page, and then we know if it works or not, right? So let's go ahead and save that and see what these problems are. Okay, those are fine. And let's start the application and make sure I didn't make any mistakes or forgot to add something. Seems fine. Just do a quick refresh here. No console errors. So we know that that part worked, right? So something happened there. Okay, I'm stuck on the screen. There we go. So we got invalid API key. Please do this. So we got a 401 error because apparently I don't know how to do API keys. So let me just check that real quick. Let's just jump back over here. Throw up the privacy screen so I can just take a look. Maybe I made a mistake. It definitely looks like an API key to me. Let's see here. Okay. .env. Just checking one more thing to make sure I'm not crazy. Okay. And we save that and then make sure I didn't make a mistake in our URL. App ID equals $API key. Okay. And one more thing. 529, get the weather again. Oh, I know what I did. Okay, this is a good lesson for everybody. You just save my changes and drop the screen back in. All right, so what I forgot to do is I added the .env. So here we said, hey, process this, and hey, do this. But we didn't actually tell the app that we want to use the .env processor. So this is actually just null right now. It's just empty. It doesn't know what it's doing. And I only just realized that because I am stupid. So in the app.js file, when you use this, you're going to have to add one line to the top of your application. And you need to do it as high as possible so that it's available when your app is ready. So inside of here, you're going to do require, and then .env, and then .config, and then close it out. And now, if all things go according to plan, and I'm not so special, minimize that. All right, so now we're actually getting the weather. Huzzah. Here's the weather. Apparently the weather right now is it's cloudy with a few clouds. And the temperature here, somewhere in here, is currently 94, but it feels like 105, which is 100% accurate. It is hot as hell outside. And that's in Fahrenheit. And then we got the humidity at 66%. And then we got the speed here at 6 miles an hour. And yeah, so a few things about this API response that comes back. Let's talk about this. Oh, yeah, so the fix for the .env, good question, was I apparently was going too fast for myself. You have to put this as part of your app, require.env.config. And I hadn't put it in there, so when it was reading the .env file, it wasn't actually doing anything, so it was just null every time. So when you're using that .env package, you have to put this in so that it knows to read them. And so it did that, and then boom, everything started working as expected. So word of advice, go slow, and you'll be good to go. No problem, anytime. So yeah, so we have this, and then there's one more thing in here, and that's this icon, right? So I talked about earlier how the API actually gives us icons to play with, but as you can see here, the icon is just 02D, which to anybody doesn't really help. So part of the Open Weather API, if we just type Open Weather API and say icons, you can see here that the weather conditions API actually requires you to place in the URL for the icon. So you can see the URL here is like basically an image store that they have, and you can use this and it will return the PNG with this number. So 04N is broken clouds, this is a few clouds, and they have a night version and a day version that comes back. So we're going to have to make sure that we incorporate this into our application so that we can handle these icons and not just say, yeah, it's a 01N. Just go ahead and look that up for me. So we'll have to do that. So the good news is, at least, is that we're 100% getting back something from the response, right? So we have all of this data now, but we don't really know what to do with it per se, right? So what we should do now is, instead of passing this body and doing nothing with it, what we should do is take this body and do some stuff with it. So let's do that. So at this point, we can just say, before we even do anything else, say if there's an error. Nope, I definitely don't want to do that. If there's an error, what we want to do is to actually render the page still. So we're going to do res.render, which says the response is going to render a page, which you can see down here. It says render view with the given options and callback functions. So we're going to tell it, if there's an error, we still want to render a page, and we're still going to want to render the weather page again. But we're going to just tell it that there is nothing, right? So we're going to just do this, and inside of here, we're going to set the weather to null, and then we're going to set the error so that it's handled right away, and we're just going to say, sorry, there was an error, please try again, nothing was returned. So this will just say, if there's an error, screw you, like, why even bother trying to do anything? Like, why even bother trying to do anything else here, right? Let's just close that out. So this will render if there's an error and just say, please try again. And now we know that the user's been prompted to retry if there happens to be an error, which, hopefully there's not. Let's go ahead and save that. So now what we can do is actually do something else. So else, now we're actually going to get into the meat and potatoes of creating something from nothing, right? So we can just say else, what we'll do is we'll set the weather equal to the JSON.parse body. So we know that the weather in this error will probably be null, or it will be something that we don't want to display to the user. So we've handled that, and now we're saying, give us this, and say, yep, I want something back from here. Now we have to be exceedingly careful, because part of the API is that even if, let's go back here. So for whatever reason, the main can be returned and it will just be an empty object. So we're basically saying, or it will be undefined. So like this weather will be returned, this whole API response will be returned, but it will actually just be an empty object. That's how it works, not the other way around. So anytime there happens to be a response that doesn't warrant something, it will just return this empty or undefined, I guess is actually what happens. So what we can do here is say another statement to clarify would be this. If the weather.main equals undefined, then we're going to render one more error message, that says response render. We're going to still render weather, but this time we're going to say, and just for the sake of clarity, what we'll do is we'll take this error message here and this weather null, and we'll say, please try again. The weather was undefined. And that's just for us, right? Like, we're building this app out. It's not going to be used on the internet, but we need to make sure that we're handling certain scenarios. So now we have, if there's an error, we'll do an error message. Else, if there is something that's returned, but the weather.main is undefined for some reason, give them another error message. And now we can just say, all right, else. Now we can actually do something, right? So now we can say, hey, if you did get something back, let's go ahead and render something. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this great feature, which you've kind of seen up there, is we're going to do a render, and we're going to break it down. So instead of sending the whole weather API and not using any of it, we're only going to use a small portion of the API. So what we can do is say, okay, when we get to a successful place where we are going to be returning the weather, we only want to return and render a few things. So what you can do is do something like this. So inside the object, we can just say, okay, the name and then whatever that might be. So we know if we look at the API response, which here, there is somewhere in this, the name, right? So we know that the name is going to be returned. So let's do the name so that we can render where somebody has actually looked for the weather in case there's some weird thing where the zip code doesn't quite match the city, or they have multiple zip codes for an area and theirs happens to return the wrong one. So we can do weather.name, and then we can start digging in, right? So now we want the temp. So to do that, we go back to that screen, we know that the temperature is weather.main, because that's the response back, right? So weather is the response back. So we're going through this whole API, and we want to go here, which is inside the object, and then we want the temperature from inside the object. So to do that, we'll just minimize this again. So the weather itself is the body that is returned. So we know that we want weather.main, and then we want something inside of it. So we want the temperature. Now we can do humidity because that's in the same area. So humidity will be weather.main.humidity. And maybe we want the feels like, because the feels like, you know, is really what the temperature feels like outside. So maybe it's 75 out, but it feels 102. Similar to what we have here, which is it's 95, but it feels like 105. So we'll do weather.main.feels like. I think that's right. Let's check that one more time. Yeah, feels like. All right, so that's what we want. Okay. Feels like, and then we don't care about the min and max temperature because, like, they're asking for the weather right now. They don't care what the min or max could be for that day, but they do care about the wind because you don't want your hair blowing around, right? So that's going to be weather.something. So let's see what that is. It's weather.wind, and then we just want the speed. We don't care about the degrees, but we do care about the speed. So let's take that. And now there comes the icon bit, right? So remember I discussed earlier about how the icon is actually a URL that they give you, and then you have to import something in. So to do that, it's going to be returned here. So we're going to do HTTP open weather map.org, because I want to make sure I get this right. So if I type it out, at least I know that we're in the right spot. So it's image, and then it's WN, which gives you the weather, and then here is where we're going to actually insert something in. So it's going to be weather.weather, just to confuse everybody, and then 0, which is the first index of weather. So if you see here, here's the weather, and inside of here has icon, right? So we're going to grab this icon, but this array could contain more than one object, but we only want the first one, because in theory, we should only care about the first object that's in there. So now we can just say, okay, let's minimize this again. There we go. We can say dot icon. So that gives us the icon. And then we can denote the size of the icon, right? So I want the biggest size that they do, and I already know that it's 4x. That's as big as they get. They don't get any bigger than 4x, which took me a while to research. Okay, so now we have the icon, and the only other thing that we really want is the description, which tells us what the weather is right now in words, in a string. So it could be cloudy with a chance of meatballs or whatever. So that's also in the weather.weather, and that's going to be description. So that's simple. And then what we'll do is we'll put the error and we'll set that to null. So we know for a fact that the error is null at this point, right? We know that we're not going to be in an error state, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's break this down. Let me just minimize this completely because we don't actually care about it too much. And let me just hit save. So what we have now is we're saying if there's an error, we'll render just an error message. If there isn't an error, but for some reason the weather.main is undefined, we'll just tell them again that there's an error. But if we're successful, we'll go ahead and take the name, the temperature, humidity, what it feels like outside, wind, icon description, and error, and put that as null. So at this point, this will actually pass these along to this wonderful weather view. But the weather view currently doesn't do anything, right? It just doesn't do anything. So the first thing that we want to do is add the partials to the top of the page and say include the partials from earlier, and that's header. So one of the things that you have to realize with these is that in views you can do some cool stuff. So let me just what you can do is something like this, right? So if we want the name, we can do this, and that will actually give us the name, which is what is in this, right? So all these can be accessed through the EJS using this as the way to access them. So you do the open and then % equals name and then % and then close. The problem with this is that if you do request something that does not exist and it's in an error state for some reason, the application will basically just die. It will just be like, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't access name. Name is not available. I'm just going to die. It doesn't gracefully just not include them. So what we have to do is we have to handle them ourselves. We have to say, if there's no error, go ahead and give me all this information. But if there is an error, let's go ahead and show that to the user. So let's build that piece now. But first, before we do that, let's make sure we include partials and footer so that we know this is good. And that doesn't really help. Thank you for formatting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a little tiny snippet of code here that says, hey, if there's no error, just go ahead and render everything else, then we'll just render something else. So to do that, you can do these if statements inside of it. So it just says, just like a standard if statement, you do it inside the % again, if there's no error. And remember, I set that error to null, so it's not going to be true. Then we can do this. And then what we'll do is we'll take this piece and it says, if there's an error, do this. And then we've basically opened this up to say, at some point, I know that he's going to write something else. So to do that, we do this, and then we can do an else statement. Sort of similar fashion, we can just do that. I think that's enough of these. Let's see, that one closes out. I might have messed up here. Yeah, we messed up here. There shouldn't be one of those because we're closing it down here. Yes, okay. So what we've done here, that was a bit confusing. It says, if there is an error, if there's no error, go ahead and render this name. Else, we'll just write, you know, a div in here that says error. And we'll put a div in here. And we'll just drop this name in here. So now in theory, if we try this now, we should actually get the name back. So let's give that a shot, right? And then if I've made a mistake, a horrible, horrible mistake, we can deal with that. So 27529, get weather. All right, so we know it's working, right? So the if statement is clearly doing what we wanted it to do. It's saying if there's no error, we'll render this name. So that part's good. So we're successful in at least creating the API and getting a response back. So at this point, we really should just make a container to hold everything, and then we'll go from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to create like a card that inside that card is going to be all this information. So to do that, first I have to fight with my code here. We're going to do a div and then a class. And that class is going to be mAuto, max width. We're going to make it rounded on the corners. This is very confusing if you've never used Tailwind, but we'll describe what exactly is happening afterwards. We'll go ahead and set the overflow to hidden, and then we'll put a shadow on it too, so that we can see it on sort of, you know, so that it looks like something. And now we'll just go ahead and take this ending div and we'll drop it here. So this essentially is saying like, hey, create like a nice looking something on our screen. So if we go ahead and go back to the home screen and say get weather now, you can see that we've kind of centered this now in the middle of the screen. And if we inspect this element, so what we've done, we've added a box shadow, we've set the overflow to hidden, we set the max width and it's currently 24 rem. We set the margins to auto, and then we have a border radius too. So basically this is saying like, hey, build me a nice looking like centered mass that has a border radius. Its margins are automatically applied. So essentially it just sticks it right in the middle of the screen for us. And then on top of that, you know, we have our max width, which will change as we get, you know, as we do this. Like it's fully responsive. So there we go. So now what we can do is sort of like build inside of this something that looks pretty cool. So first we want to also wrap a class, and we're going to set the padding around it. So px is padding one way and then py is padding the other way. So here we're going to say the padding going on the x-axis is 6, and then padding on the y is 4. So x and y axis. We're going to just take this and we'll close this around the whole thing as well. So this will actually close around this. So this will give us padding all the way around. Let's go ahead and save that, make it a little easier. And now we can kind of start making some changes to how it looks, how it feels, and then by the end of it, we should have this super nice looking, basically square card that the user will be presented once they do some stuff. So now we have that. So now we really need to look at what happens next, right? So we know that it's going to be this div is the name of where we're getting the weather from, right? So let's make this into some sort of big text, but not quite an H text, right? So something in like the extra large field, something like that. So I'm going to add another class here. I'm going to make the font bold. I'm going to set the text to extra large, which just sets it to a specific Tailwind size. Then we're going to add a margin at the bottom. And on top of that, we're going to set this text to center. So this just says, hey, make it bold, make it big, put a margin on the bottom and make it in the middle. And then what we'll do here is you can use these partial like variables along with other things. So if I just write weather in like that, hit save, this will actually be included in the I'm just trying to make it do something. Why is it not doing that? Okay, well, it should have actually made this go on a second line, but for some reason it's not. Apparently I broke my formatting, but there we go. We'll just fix it ourselves. So now if we look at it and we make another API call, and just bear in mind that the API does have a rate limit and it also does have a maximum amount of requests you can make, but if you're just making a few here and there, you're never going to hit that number. So don't worry about it unless you're really hammering it. So now if we go back and say, oh, we tried to get the weather. So that's what happens if you try and do a get, right? You get a 404 not found. And a get is just a regular request. So if you just make a regular request to the /weather, you'll get 404 not found. All right, so now we have like an action. You can kind of see where we're going with this. Now we have a card that says weather in Ghana. So we know that the weather that we're being returned is in Ghana. And now we can start building out more of the information for the user. So now we have this. Now what we could do is say, okay, now we need the description of the weather, right? So we know the weather where the weather is located, but we need the description. So here again, we'll put a margin on the bottom that's 2. We'll ask it to be centered, but we won't make it any bigger and we won't make it bold because we want it to kind of be just on its own. And then what we'll do is we'll do the description. And that will give us the description from the variables again in here. So what we're requesting is just this description right here. So going back here, what we could do is say, maybe something like current weather looks like description. And then let's go ahead and go back and see what that looks like. And I keep accidentally doing that. So let's do a different one. Get the weather. Current weather looks like few clouds, which that doesn't sound good, but we can fix that. We'll just put description for now. We'll just put current weather description and then whatever it is. And that's because the way that they actually return the description, you can't just write current weather is few clouds or has, because has few clouds, like they're very not great with their description. So we'll just put current weather description because we're just building this and we're just trying to make it look nice. So now at this point, what I want to add, right, is the image big in the middle that says, you know, whatever the icon might be. So let's add an image. Let's add a class to this image, and we're going to do mx auto, and that just centers the image. So this will actually take it and put it right in the middle of the screen, and we'll put a Z50 on there. Actually, we probably won't need that. Z50 would be the Z index of 50, making it on the top, but I don't think we'll have that issue. But if we do, we can just add a Z index. So the source for this is a bit different than the ways we've used these before. So we're actually going to do it inside of this like this. Same idea though. And that will give us the icon, and then we just need the alt for all those people that can't see, or if they're using a screen reader, we'll just put the weather icon. And then we'll close that out. And now we can go ahead and go back again. And this is the best way to iterate over your development, right? Don't just develop everything at once, because you could have 100 errors and you wouldn't know. For example, right here. You may want to try ESJLint, blah, 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 unexpected token while compiling this. So we broke something somewhere. So let's just try one more thing, and then we can go and look. And this is a prime example of why you should test. Okay, and let me just try breaking it with an intentional. Yeah, okay. So unexpected token here. So in here, we probably broke something. So let's look. So this is apparently what's broken. If there's no error, if %f is not error, then do space. Yeah, that's totally on my list of streams, actually. That might be on a Wednesday stream, not a Sunday stream. Wednesday streams are more like coding challenges and things like that. And I thought about doing unit tests because, like, nobody writes them anymore, apparently. Like, everybody's scared of testing. And I'm a big advocate for testing. So maybe I messed up this. Yeah. There we go. That should fix it. Added an extra %. I mean, an extra equals, as it was looking for 2 instead of 1. There we go. All right, so now we can see that we just have like a moody old scattered cloud here. And then let's just try a different zip code. 08848. In Milford, New Jersey right now, it's apparently very sunny. So we've just seen a couple of different icons that they provide, and at least we know that that's working the way it should. So let's get on to the next piece, which is basically we're going to build out the pill-looking style so that we can have the information sort of place at the bottom, but be like in little pills so that you don't have to write like a big old chunk. So to do that, we're gonna build another div, and that's gonna contain them all, and they're just gonna be spans. So we'll go ahead and make another one of these with the same specs as before. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a span, and each one of these spans is gonna contain something. So we'll just do temp, and then we'll do equals temp, and then %, and then we'll put an F at the end because we know the temperature is in Fahrenheit. So let's just see what that looks like, and then go from there. All right, so we have the temperature at the bottom of the screen. It doesn't quite look like the way we want, but it's a good start. So what we'll do is we'll make a simple sort of pill design that's just silver or gray or whatever color you want to call it, and we'll go from there. But the idea behind this is that we'll display this to the user in a fashion that they can sort of just enjoy, and it's easy to read everything, and everything just shows up. So to do that, we're going to use some more of the wonderful Tailwind classes that I've used previously. So the first one is Inline Block. And Inline Block, of course, just simple. It's inline, and then the color will be gray, and we'll set that to 200, which is like a light gray. Then we'll set it to rounded, but rounded full. And now if we look at this now, let's see what it looks like. So almost there, right? It's almost perfect. Like, it's the perfect shape. It's rounded. It looks okay, but it's not 100% accurate. So now we just need to do some padding on the Y and on the X to add just a little bit of neatness to it. So we'll do a PX of 3 and a PY of 1. So that's 1 at the top and 3 at the sides. And we'll set the text to small. And that will give us, you know, almost everything that we need. So let's look at it now. Did I save that? Nope, try again. There we go. So we're closing in on what it should look like. This page is horrible and looks terrible. So that kind of looks like what we want. But let's make a few more changes, right? So let's make the font a different color and stuff like that, so that by the time we're done, it'll look like what we really like, the original design that we showed at the beginning of the stream. So we want the font to also be font of we don't want it bold, so let's do semi-bold, and then we'll set the text to gray like we described, and we'll set it to like a darker gray. So these numbers here, we want 700. I think that's the maximum off the top of my head. This just sets like the different shades of gray that they have in Tailwind, and then that's just the margin on the right side of it to 2. And the reason I'm setting a margin on this side is so that the next one doesn't just like, it doesn't end up looking like this, right? Where you have just 1 and 1 and it's like all touching each other. We want a little tiny space there. And we'll also add a margin on the y-axis of 1. So that if there's more than the screen can handle, right? If we start pushing these down, like if it goes wider than this and it ends up getting pushed down, they're not touching each other. Social distancing in code. All right, so there we go. So now we have this nice looking sort of cube here that has the temp in a nice little pill, essentially. And then now we can use this pill and we can create a bunch of them, and then we can do some great copying and pasting like all good coders should do to create all the other ones that we need. So we can copy this 4 times? Yeah. 4. It's 3. Is it 4 including the temp? Let's look back here. Temp, humidity, feels like, wind. 4. Okay. Yep. So we want temp here, and then we'll do feels like, and then we'll do feels like here, because those are 2 temperatures, so let's group those together, right? And then we'll do humidity, which is another factor for the, if you live in a humid state or you live in a humid area, you'll know. And finally, we'll do wind at the end. It's not very windy down here usually, so. And we'll set this to miles per hour. We'll set this to a percentage, and we'll leave that as F. Okay. How are we looking? Let's see. The wind did not come properly. Okay. Why you no come? Wind. Weather. Oh, okay. So yeah, we made a mistake here because I don't think it's that. I think it's actually this. Okay. And as you can see, like, this didn't break the application. But it would have done if we didn't have correct error handling and the whole thing didn't return anything for the render, then we'd be screwed. So now if we get weather, there we go, 7.4 miles an hour apparently. That seems a little high, but it is definitely close to 104 degrees here right now. That's for sure. Okay, so yeah, light breeze, a light breeze. 7.4 miles an hour, light breeze. Let's look at the other zip code here. So like 10 minutes from my house, apparently it's only 3 miles an hour. Okay, all right, sure, I believe you. So we have the basic layout, but now we have another issue. Yeah, apparently I am lucky. I guess it depends where you are and what the temperature is and how windy it is. And if you like the wind, I suppose. So one issue that we have now, right, is that we're giving the users the weather, but like they can't get out of this screen. Like, let me out. Like, there's nothing for them to do here. But also while we're here, we should check to see if this works on how it looks on mobile. So let's see what it looks like. Yes. So this will show us what it looks like on everything. All at the same time, we can save some time. It's gonna, like, I'm gonna warn you now, it's gonna break all the other ones, but I just want to see what it looks like on this mobile phone. 27529. Okay, it looks fine. Because I'm surprised it actually loaded on all the screens. That's surprising. Usually it breaks. So yeah, it looks fine on a iPhone X. It looks fine on this. It looks fine on my phone, which is this Pixel X2. Looks fine on this laptop, and it also looks fine on an iPad. So we know that the responsive design that we've created is working the way it should do. And if you want to use this, it's called responsively. And essentially you can just add as many in, and you can quickly filter by device or size, or you can rotate them, or you take pictures. You can switch your color scheme between, you know, light and dark, and also other things. Super useful. So if you want to do responsive design all at once, you can just do it this way instead of loading up 5 iframes or doing, you know, what a lot of people do, which is spend 45 minutes doing that. Yeah, see? I use Chrome DevTools too, usually, but like, why use that when you can use this? And you can set, you know, you can customize the designs that you have. You can try it on a BlackBerry or a Nexus or a Nokia or a Kindle Fire HDX. It's called responsively. Let's see. Let me drop this in the chat for you so that you have it. There it is. It's in the chat now. Responsively.app. And you can use that and you can set all sorts of cool devices. Super cool, and it's fully open source and free, so totally worth your time. So we know that that's working. So the only thing that we really need now is we need to be able to let our users go back and maybe check the weather somewhere else. Because maybe they got an error message, right? Which we haven't handled yet, but maybe they did get an error and we were like, oops, sorry, we don't have the weather, and they're stuck on this screen forever. So let's go ahead and just put that in there. So in here, what we'll do is at the end of the div section, we'll add in a button that just says, hey, we'll go ahead and show you something, right? So what we want to do is put this, trying to think, like, I guess it's got to go after this else, but before the partials. Okay, thinking in my head, because we want this to show even if there's an error message, right? So here we'll do a div, and inside of that div we'll do another div, and inside of that we'll do an A that says, you know, the href can go back to just the straight page. So this will just go straight back to the home page. We don't have to do anything special. And then that's it. And then we'll just write something like check again. We'll make sure it works, and then we'll style it out to make it look nice. So close that screen, and we don't need you anymore because we've built this app almost. We do have some styling to do, but overall. Did I save? I did. Did I put it in the right spot? That's a good question. Or is it all the way off the screen? There it is. Hidden in the corner. And if we go click check again, it goes back to the home screen. So we fixed that problem, but now Hey, how's it going? But now we can sort of just do some stylings on the button itself so that it doesn't look janky. So go back here. We can go ahead and see what we can do. So using Tailwind again, what we'll do is we'll just make this div in the center. So that's M auto, and then MX auto should put it in the center. What did you study and in what university? Okay, so this is kind of, actually I don't need this. It's kind of a weird question. So, not weird, but a weird answer is about to come out of my mouth. So I actually learned to code from a book in 2009. And it was like a Java book that I'd learned everything from, and that got me a role as a developer back in that time frame. And then I ended up going to an online school sort of a couple years later to study. The technical degree name was Information Technology with Software Development Emphasis, which was before a software engineering degree was available back in that time. Like, they didn't really have a dedicated one. It was either computer science or like something like that. And the university that I went to was called Western Governors University. And it's online only. And it was super flexible. So I got to like basically get my degree in as little time as possible. But yeah, so basically I'm a self-taught, but ended up going back because I thought it was good for my career. Would I have done it now? Probably not. But it's all good. It's a piece of paper that I'm proud of and my parents are proud of. So it's good enough for me. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to make like a button that is transparent. Yeah, I work for a company out in San Francisco, but I also do a lot of other stuff. I wrote a book and I do quite a few courses and some other stuff. So I'm a bit of both. So it's going to be a clear button that when you hover turns blue. The text is going to be blue regularly. We'll make the font semi-bold. And then when it hovers over the text, we'll do text white. And so then when it's blue, it's white. And when it's white, it's blue. And then we'll add some padding on either side. How's your day going? Having a good day? Or is it the end of your day? Are you still... Or are you on EST time like me, where it's sort of 4 o'clock? And then we'll set the border to blue. And then on hover, we'll set the border to transparent, I guess. Transparent. And then we'll make it rounded, which is my favorite thing. All right, that was a lot. Oh, you're at EST. Okay, so I have one on EST and Spain. I was going to say, it must be time to eat if it's that time. Must be time to eat. So yeah, so we made this button that is transparent usually. It's rounded. On hover, it turns blue. The text usually is blue. It's semi-bold. When we hover over it, the text goes back to white. We have padding on the Y and on the X-axis to make it bigger. We have a border. The border is blue. On hover, the border is transparent. Ooh, and then obviously it's rounded. I do not. I did at some point, but I have not done iOS or Android development in a long time. I do some React Native stuff occasionally, but not a huge amount. It's been a while since I've done that. Okay. So now if we refresh this and we just stick in this. All right, so now we have this button. And on hover, it goes blue. Yeah, and then if we click this, it goes back to this page. So, I know, Chrome extension gets me every time. Okay, so we're almost sort of there now, right? So we can check the weather. We return the weather, and we give them something nice and pretty, considering. But the problem now is if we hit gather weather, we just get this. We get this nice button in the middle that says, "Hey, do you want to check again?" But over here we get this. Let me just reset that back. Okay, we get an error over here on the screen, right? So that's not very helpful. So we should create something that just says like, "There's an error on the screen. I'm so sorry. Please try again." I mean, that's cool. I've seen something similar to that a couple times where people have made them. They're definitely good to build, and pretty enjoyable too. If you're up for learning something, and yeah. So the error screen needs to be something similar, right? We need to do something fairly similar. So what I'm gonna do, let's minimize this screen. So what we can do, instead of just doing this, we'll create the same box as before. This box right here. We'll take that and we'll use that as the div. And then that will make it easy, right? So now the design will look the same regardless, and then we can do something else. So what we'll do is we'll make another div, and inside that class, we'll set the padding again, sort of the similar as before. px is 6 and py is 4, and too many fast fingers. Okay. And then inside of this div, we'll just have a simple div that says, sorry, no weather was found. And then that will give us the opportunity to sort of give a nice sort of whatever we want, and we won't have to worry about what it looks like. And then on the flip side of that is we will put an image in there just to, in our public folder here, that will take care of that. So what we can do is I have an image already, which is something super basic, but let's just see if I can drop this right in here. All right, so it's actually just an image. It's actually like a password. It's supposed to be like for use for password resets, but sort of the same idea, like, oh God, like we didn't get what we wanted. So we can do that. And with Node and Express templates, you just use the public folder, set it in images, and then you're good to go. So what we can do now is inside of here, but outside our div, we'll put an image class in here. We'll set the width to full, which you can just do with W and full. Can you take a look at this UI? I mean, I'm not going to click that link right now, especially on stream, but I will consider looking at it after I'm done. So to get this, so with the way that templating works, right? Inside of here, we have this Express static folder, and it says like anything in this public folder, which is here, we can have access to. So here, the public path join directory name, public, and that will actually give us what is inside of this, and we can have access to images, we can have access to these style sheets, this JavaScript, whatever we want. So for this, we can just say, hey, /images, and then whatever the image is called. So we called it no weather.png. And that will then render this image at full width across the screen. So if we go back to the application now and say, okay, 27529, get weather. Okay, the weather looks fine. We hit check again. And I've intentionally got one here that's got an L at the end. And it says, oh, sorry, no weather was found. But the check again's all the way down here, which is a bit weird. So we've clearly messed something up. And then on top of that, this is not centered and it doesn't look nice at all. So let's fix that. So let's see here. Oh, okay, hold on a minute. We didn't close out our image. There we go. So that caused a problem. So let's look at it now, which will probably mean everything will render correctly now. Okay, so now this is all rendering correctly, and now we just got to fix this piece. So to fix that, we'll just do some simple classes on here. We'll just add font bold to make it bold. We'll make the text extra large so that it's easy to be seen. Put a margin at the bottom just to push it out a bit, and then we'll center the text. And now, go. Let's see here. All right, sorry, no weather was found. Click check again, type in the right zip code, everything comes up gravy. So we've now already done all we were gonna do with this page. Like it has everything that we expect it to, but the only thing that we really need to fix is the index page, because this index page right now, it doesn't do a lot, does it? Like, it's, you know, all the way over here, it's just all this white space. So let's fix that. So in our index file, we're using just an input, and it's not anything fancy. We didn't do anything with the form itself. So let's fix the form first. So let's add a class to the form, and we'll make it full. And we'll do M is auto. So this should put it right in the middle of the screen. There we go. So now it's kind of in the middle of the screen. So that makes it easier, right? So now it's in the middle of the screen. We can do a little bit more with it, and we can make everything kind of look funky and cool, and we'll put a border around it and some other stuff. So now that we have that, we need to add a div class here, and we'll set that to flex, and flex, thank you. And then the items in the center. So this just sets the items to center. We'll add a border at the bottom, which is border B, border B2, to say like that's pretty thick at the bottom. Then we need to set the border to a color. So I used blue 500 in the other screen. So let's use border 500 in this screen too. Board blue 500. And we'll add padding on the Y side, just two, just a small amount. So let's see where that should probably end up here. No, div, thank you. Trying to get smart. No, we'll close that div out. Okay, and now if we refresh the page, now it's good. Now we're kind of speeding along because we don't have to worry so much about like calling the API every 10 seconds. Okay, because we're kind of getting there now. That's horrible. This button doesn't look like a button. It's crammed up against here. So let's make some changes to make this look like what we want. Well, we're about 99% of the way there now. Now we're kind of just playing with styles. So the input, let's add the class. and we're going to do appearance, appearance none. And now what appearance none does is, if I go back, too many screens, not enough time. Apparently did nothing. Okay. Let me mistake. Class appearance. Good spelling. 10 out of 10. Man, I should have installed the extension. There's an extension for Twitch chat to fix my spelling mistakes. I need that for sure. Like, I screw up so much. All right, let's try it again. Okay. It's not what I expect to happen. Appearance none. Oh, there. Okay. I'm special. So yeah, appearance none does one piece, but we have to do some more. Okay, now that should fix that. Or not. Did I forget how this works? Appearance none. Background transparent, border none. Oh, is there like a... Yeah, okay. Focus. Okay, so we fixed one problem, which is there shouldn't be one at any point. And now when you focus in it, you need an outline set to none. Yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing. It's been a while. Okay, so now that we've set that, we just need to kind of shove this button over here, make it look nice. And there's a few more things I want to do. So, there we go. Focus outline. So the only other things that we really need to do is, hold on. Okay. We need to set the width to full so that it's the full width of the container. And then we'll set the text to gray, but like 700, because right now it's kind of hard to see. Like, it's probably harder to see on stream than it is on my screen, but it's kind of hard to see. And then we'll set the margin on the right to 3, the pixel padding on the Y to 1, the padding on the X to 2, and then finally the leading will set to tight. All right, so now we're kind of getting there. Now it kind of looks like what it should look like, except from this horrible thing over here. It looks good. So let's go ahead and fix this button now so it actually looks like a button and doesn't just look like some sort of blob from the lagoon. And then we should be pretty close to being done. So let's see here. All right, so we're gonna have to use flex because we're gonna have to shrink the button so that it kind of fits. So let's add a class here. And we're going to do flex shrink 0. Now, let's just go through what that does because it's a bit confusing. So it does flex shrink 0, which if we go here, the element will not shrink. So essentially it will just always be the same size, and it won't wrap it around. This is like good for the button that we want to make, because we want to make the button basically just a single line with a clickable box, because, you know, it doesn't have much in there. Yeah, I get confused with shrink and grow too, so you're not the only one. I always forget which one is what. If one is on and 0 is off, or the other way around, or what, as I like to think of it, like 0 is off, 1 is on, and then 2 is like, you know, to the extreme. Okay, so flex shrink 0, and then we'll put a border color on here as well, and we'll set that to blue 500, which we've used throughout the app to keep it the same. On hover, we'll do Okay, we'll make it darker. Okay, yeah, that probably makes most sense. So on hover, it will just get a little bit darker, not too crazy. Then we'll set the border to blue. On on hover, we'll set the border to blue 700, so it looks the same. Then we'll make the text smaller, and then on top of that, we'll just do a fat border of 4, py, px of 2. So that's 1 this way, 2 this way, and we'll make it rounded. And that's sort of close. What's happening here? Oh, did I forget the border on the flip side of that? Let's see here. No daemon is working. I just like to refresh the page every time. So no daemon just it is working, but I'm refreshing every time to make sure that like the changes are being applied, because it's on that single page, right? So no daemon is reloading the pages, but I just like to refresh. It's a thing out of habit that I've done for years, so don't get confused. Did I miss something here? I think I missed the border on the front half. Right, yeah, okay. So blue 500. I put the border on the hover right here. And I should probably set the text to white while I'm at it. Look, don't fight with me, machine. Okay. Apparently I must have misspelled something again. Oh. There we go. That should have fixed that. There we go. Okay, so now it looks like a button. That's the way it should. And when we hover over it, it just changes color. And when we're in this mode, it just does that. So we should check this page too to make sure it's fully responsive. Yep, it's not pushed off the screen. Okay. And let's just make sure we didn't break anything here. Okay. And let's just make sure. Yeah, all right. Yep, that looks fine to me. Cool. So yeah, I think that's probably where we're gonna leave off today. We've been live for I don't know how long. 2 hours and 9 minutes apparently. But yeah, everything's working the way expected. We get exactly what we want, and apparently the weather has changed since we last checked, so now I'm getting the sunshine instead of the clouds. But apparently the wind has gone up a little bit here. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually end the stream here, and then what I'll do is I'll upload this code to my GitHub repository, which is just github.com/ github.com/perkinsjr, I believe is my GitHub. Let me just check. Yep. All right. So yeah, so I'm gonna upload it here. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that you enjoyed the stream, and I'm glad that you enjoyed Tailwind, because I don't normally use it. Like, it's not my favorite thing. I've used it a few times, and I know most of the ins and outs, but it's not my favorite CSS thing right now, at least. So I'm going to upload the code here. You guys can grab it from there. And what will happen is, you know, you can play around with it. You can add a pull request. I think CSS scares everybody. Honestly, I think a lot of people get spooked by CSS, and I think it just takes time and experience to get used to doing CSS. Like, learning Tailwind is fine. But I can tell you from experience that older shops will not use that. Like, they'll be using like regular CSS, and that's when it gets a little risky, because you could walk into a place and be like, I'm really confident with Tailwind, and then yeah, raw CSS. My last place, it was literally raw CSS, and all we did was just straight up CSS all the time. And why not what? Why are they using raw CSS? It's kind of just like okay, that's not right. So places, a lot of older companies that are still like are pretty high up on the development scale, like they do a lot of development, but will probably be much further behind in using new tech. Actually, at that place, we were using raw CSS, and also we were using raw JavaScript, like vanilla. That was partly my choice, to use raw vanilla JavaScript versus like using jQuery, because that was our options. And I have a big issue with jQuery, that people overuse it. I think it's great. It gets a lot of hate, but I think it's really good. But it gets overused for simple things like getting an element ID from a document. You shouldn't be using jQuery for that. You should be using vanilla if you're not using a framework. So yeah, so learning CSS is important, and it's rough, but when you get used to like how CSS works, it becomes much easier. You'll see me use a lot of just straight up vanilla CSS on my Wednesday streams, because I do code challenges like, for example, front end mentor, which is cool if you want to learn some front end stuff. I'll use that, and I'll make it all in vanilla with Flex. Yeah, definitely spend some time in CSS. It's fun. Like, it gets a lot of hate, but people have a lot of fun with it in the end. I think, at least. I'm trying to join Wednesday, so we post on Twitter today. Yeah, I mean, I've been away for a while because had some problems with my internet, and then I just got a new stream machine, which is what I'm on now. So my schedule's been a bit messed up, but definitely Sundays, 100% Sundays, guaranteed. And then Wednesdays, yeah, we should be good to go again now. But yeah, this will be up. If you want to see the code all over again, the VOD will be up tomorrow, because I'm bound by Twitch to not upload till tomorrow on my YouTube channel. And you should check my YouTube channel out too. I do some stuff on there, like there's a video on Flexbox where I do a pricing table in Flexbox, just straight vanilla CSS. It's an older video, but it's definitely worth checking out. All right, so until next time, I'll see you guys.